On July 29, 2025, the economic partnership between the U.S. and Canada teeters on the brink. A trade dispute has erupted into a crisis, shaking financial markets and households. U.S. protectionist measures have led to a tit-for-tat tariff battle. Ontario Premier Doug Ford retaliates by targeting U.S. reliance on Canadian electricity. This escalation threatens power supplies and business stability. U.S. stock markets plunge amid fears of a Trump-induced recession. The foundations of North American trade are shaken, with an unclear path forward. The decisions made now could define the economic landscape for years. To understand the trade war, we must grasp tariffs, a tax on imported goods. Tariffs make foreign products more expensive, encouraging domestic purchases. For example, a 10% tariff on a 20,000 pounds car adds 2,000 pounds, making local options more appealing. While protecting local industries, tariffs can harm others by raising costs. Companies using taxed materials face higher expenses, leading to inflation. Retaliation often follows, sparking trade wars that disrupt economies. Country A's tariff on steel may lead Country B to tax agricultural goods. This escalation can spiral, making products more expensive for all. Tariffs, while protective, can harm the economies they aim to shield. President Trump's decision to impose tariffs was rooted in his long-standing belief that previous trade agreements put the United States at a disadvantage. He often argued that, for decades, American workers and industries had suffered as a result of what he called unfair trade practices by other countries. Trump saw the U.S. as losing out, with jobs moving overseas and American factories closing their doors. According to Trump, low tariffs and open markets allowed a flood of foreign goods into the country, making it difficult for American-made products to compete. He claimed this led to the decline of key industries and the loss of countless jobs, especially in manufacturing sectors that once formed the backbone of the U.S. economy. By targeting steel and aluminum with new tariffs, the administration aimed to breathe new life into these struggling industries. Trump argued that protecting domestic production was essential not only for economic reasons, but also for the country's long-term strength and independence. The White House framed these tariffs as a matter of national security, insisting that a strong domestic steel and aluminum industry was vital for military readiness and infrastructure. Even close allies like Canada were not exempt. A 25% tariff on imported metals was imposed, with the administration arguing that reducing reliance on foreign suppliers would make America safer and more self-sufficient. Trump's aggressive approach was also a negotiating tactic. By putting pressure on trading partners, he hoped to force them back to the table and secure deals that he believed would better serve American interests. Canada, the largest supplier of steel and aluminum to the U.S., felt singled out by these measures. Canadian leaders called the tariffs unjustified and counterproductive, straining relations between the two close neighbors. Economists and business leaders warned that the tariffs could spark trade wars, raise prices for consumers, and disrupt global supply chains. Despite these concerns, Trump remained steadfast, insisting that short-term pain was necessary for long-term gain. Ultimately, President Trump's tariffs sent a clear message. He was willing to risk economic disruption and international backlash to pursue his America First agenda, prioritizing U.S. industries and workers above all else. In the wake of sweeping U.S. tariffs on Canadian goods, tensions between the two countries reach a boiling point. Canada, under the leadership of Ontario's Premier Doug Ford, decides to take a bold and unprecedented step in retaliation. Ford, known for his combative style and fierce defense of Ontario's interests, steps into the spotlight, determined to show that Canada will not be pushed around. The move is not just about economics, it's about national pride, political leverage, and sending a message that resonates far beyond the border. Ford sees the U.S. tariffs as a direct attack on the livelihoods of his constituents, workers, families, and businesses who depend on cross-border trade. In a dramatic press conference, he announces a 25% surcharge on electricity exports to the United States, a move designed to hit back where it hurts most. This isn't just a symbolic gesture. It's a calculated economic counterstrike, targeting a critical resource that millions of Americans rely on every day. Ontario is not just any province, it's a powerhouse, literally. As one of the largest suppliers of electricity to the U.S., Ontario's energy flows into major states like New York and Michigan, powering homes, factories, and entire cities. The new surcharge instantly disrupts this vital supply chain, creating uncertainty and anxiety on both sides of the border. The impact is immediate and widespread. Utility bills for 1.5 million Americans surge overnight, leaving families and businesses scrambling to adjust. For many, the sudden spike in costs is a wake-up call, highlighting just how interconnected the two economies have become. Ford's message is clear. If the U.S. wants to play hardball, Canada can respond in kind. At the heart of the conflict, Ford points the finger squarely at President Trump. He accuses the U.S. administration of triggering a self-inflicted recession, arguing that the tariffs and the resulting energy surcharge are symptoms of a much deeper rift. The rhetoric on both sides grows sharper, with each leader blaming the other for escalating the crisis. Behind the scenes, the electricity surcharge had been on the table as a threat since March, a bargaining chip in tense negotiations that have now ground to a halt. With talks stalled and no resolution in sight, Ford makes good on his warning, turning a diplomatic standoff into a full-blown economic confrontation. And Ford isn't done yet. He ups the ante, threatening to cut off electricity exports entirely if the U.S. dares to escalate further. The prospect of blackouts in major American cities suddenly becomes a real possibility, raising the stakes and putting immense pressure on U.S. negotiators to find a way out. The hardline approach finds support at the highest levels. Incoming Prime Minister Mark Carney, a respected figure in both financial and political circles, throws his weight behind Ford's strategy. The message from Ottawa is unified. Canada will defend its interests, no matter the cost. With energy now at the center of the dispute, the trade war shifts from tariffs on steel and aluminum to the lifeblood of modern economies, electricity. Canada's power play transforms the conflict, making it clear that essential resources are now on the negotiating table. The stakes have never been higher. Factories face shutdowns, border crossings slow to a crawl, and protests erupt as the economic fallout spreads. The stock market reacts with volatility, reflecting the uncertainty gripping both nations. What began as a dispute over tariffs has now escalated into a battle over the very infrastructure that keeps North America running. Ford's aggressive actions underscore the gravity of the crisis, forcing both countries to confront the real costs of economic warfare. As the world watches, the outcome of this standoff could reshape the future of cross-border relations for years to come. The trade war's impact is felt by ordinary people through higher prices. U.S. tariffs on metals raise costs for companies, leading to pricier goods. Procter & Gamble cites tariffs for price hikes on everyday items. Ford's electricity surcharge increases energy bills for 1.5 million Americans. Rising costs squeeze household budgets, affecting disposable income. Economic uncertainty dampens consumer confidence, reducing spending. This cycle threatens jobs as businesses face declining sales. The trade war's tangible effects make life more expensive and uncertain. The ongoing trade dispute sends shockwaves through both U.S. and Canadian industries, disrupting the daily operations of countless factories and manufacturing plants. What once were bustling centers of productivity now face uncertainty, as workers and managers alike grapple with the new economic reality. The ripple effects are felt far beyond the factory floor, touching entire communities that depend on these industries for their livelihoods. Tariffs, introduced as a measure to protect U.S. manufacturing, have instead created a web of complex challenges. While the intention was to shield domestic producers from foreign competition, the reality is far more complicated. Companies must now navigate a maze of new regulations, shifting supply chains and rising costs, all while trying to remain competitive in a global market. Some steel producers do see short-term gains as imports become more expensive, but for many other industries the financial strain is immediate and severe. Accountants scramble to balance budgets, and warehouses that once bustled with activity now sit partially empty, reflecting a slowdown in orders and production. Nowhere is this impact more evident than in the U.S. auto industry. Deeply reliant on cross-border supply chains, automakers face delays and disruptions as parts become harder to source and more expensive to import. Production lines slow or even halt, and the uncertainty ripples through every level of the industry. Tariffs drive up the cost of essential materials, forcing manufacturers to make tough decisions. Some pass these costs on to consumers, while others absorb the losses, putting their own financial stability at risk. The competitive disadvantage grows, especially against foreign rivals not subject to the same tariffs. the aluminum industry, which supports over 430,000 American jobs, is particularly vulnerable. As tariffs bite into profits, companies are forced to consider layoffs and cutbacks, threatening the livelihoods of workers and the economic health of entire regions. Industry leaders like Alcoa warn that the ongoing trade conflict could ultimately cost the U.S. up to 100,000 jobs. As companies scale back operations or relocate production overseas, the threat of widespread layoffs becomes a harsh reality for many families. In Canada, the stakes are just as high. The U.S. is the single most important market for Canadian steel and aluminum, and any disruption in trade puts thousands of jobs and billions of dollars in exports at risk. Auto tariffs in particular threaten Ontario's massive automotive sector. Major manufacturers like Ford have voiced strong opposition, warning that these measures could devastate the industry and lead to significant job losses on both sides of the border. The uncertainty created by the trade war has a chilling effect on investment. Companies put expansion plans on hold, job postings disappear, and business leaders grow increasingly wary of making long-term commitments in such a volatile environment. As the conflict escalates, businesses are forced to reconsider their long-term viability. Some contemplate selling assets or shutting down entirely, while others look for ways to adapt to the new normal, hoping for relief that may not come soon. Ultimately, the industrial sector bears the brunt of the trade war's consequences, with workers, families, and entire communities left to navigate an uncertain future shaped by forces far beyond their control. As U.S.-Canada tensions peak, China opens a new front. China retaliates against U.S. tariffs with its own, targeting sensitive sectors. New tariffs on U.S. agricultural goods hit politically vital areas. The loss of the Chinese market threatens American farmers. The U.S. now faces a two-front economic battle with major trading partners. China's move complicates resolution efforts, adding global complexity. Businesses face disrupted supply chains and rising costs. The global economy's fragility is exposed as conflicts escalate. The trade war is marked by strong confrontational leader statements. President Trump threatens auto tariffs, showing willingness for economic force. His suggestion of Canada as the 51st state angers Canadian officials. Premier Doug Ford blames Trump, framing the conflict as a survival battle. Ford's threat to cut electricity underscores the crisis's severity. Incoming Prime Minister Carney vows to maintain retaliatory measures. Critics like Senator Rand Paul warn of higher costs for Americans. Economic commentators label the tariff strategy as disastrous. As economic retaliation unfolds, the future remains uncertain. Trump's response to Ontario's surcharge could escalate tensions. Higher tariffs on Canadian goods or auto tariffs could cripple economies. Market turmoil reflects investor anxiety over a potential recession. Business leaders urge negotiations to ease rising costs and disruptions. A diplomatic solution, though elusive, remains possible. U.S. and Canadian officials may renegotiate trade agreements. A resolution requires rolling back tariffs and withdrawing retaliatory measures. The deeply integrated U.S.-Canada relationship faces a critical test. The world watches to see if historic allies can repair their partnership.